What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Timeless, the season series premiere, all that good stuff. This show has been advertised a lot for the past couple months at least, and it's a show that looked very interesting. For those of you who have not seen Legends of Tomorrow on the CW, it's essentially similar premise. They take some of the characters from Arrow and The Flash, which are two other DC CW shows, take some of the side characters there, form a team, and go back in time to stop this one guy from pretty much ruling the world in previous time. That whole thing, like it's been done before, but I really liked what I saw from the previews. Leading up into this, they had some interesting concepts. The Hindenburg not crashing. All these little touches here and there, like, oh, he stopped that. Now, how does that change the future? And what does this mean? And what is he trying to do? It's a very interesting concept, albeit one that I've heard before, but it looks like it's done in a clever enough way to where maybe they've got a general new idea, and they do. Much different than Legends of Tomorrow, mainly because there are no superpowers involved right now. But aside from that, it feels a bit more historically correct. Like it feels like they really are focusing more on the history and less on the time travel part of it. Like they're introducing characters from the past that have died on a certain day and stuff like that. It feels, especially when your main character is a history buff, it makes it feel more historical as well. But let's talk about this episode. It's the pilot episode, so you got to introduce your characters, you got to introduce some of the connections, some of the relationships, you got to talk about what the show's going to be about, you got to introduce your villain, you got to do all of this stuff, and they did it fairly well. It was good, it was entertaining, had some funny moments, had some really good intense moments, and overall the story's really good. So first let's talk about the characters. You've got your main character, Lucy, who is, like I said, history buff. She teaches history, she loves history. Pretty much, I feel like there are going to be a lot of times this season where they say, oh, this date. And she's like, oh, this is what happened on this date. And it's like, how do you even know this off the top of your head? Like, if somebody just told me a random date and I would just be like, oh, yeah, that was the day that Abraham Lincoln got assassinated. I'd be like, what day was that again? Oh, Abraham Lincoln, right. I didn't know that. So anyway, you've got an interesting character in that she knows a lot about history. So they go back in time and they see this one girl just in a bar, and she's like, "Oh, that's Kate something. She wrote this article on the wars and stuff," and she just knows all this stuff off the top of her head, and it makes it entertaining at times. To actually be able to engage with some of these characters and be like, "Oh, I know who that is now because she told me. Thank you." You've got the military guy at her side. They've already set up that they're going to get together. They've done the whole thing where he used to have a wife, and I guess she died. She's pretty much single and lonely, and they don't like each other right now, which means by the end of the season, they're going to like each other. I hate that they're going for this cliche. In fact, if they don't, that would be even better, but they're already setting it up. They've already got some chemistry going on, so I feel like by the end of the season, they're going to be together. It's bound to happen. We'll see where it goes, but it's funny enough seeing them interact. You got he's a bit more of a obviously military type, but he doesn't really play by the rules at first. So it's like he gets brought in. They're talking about time travel. It's like, okay, sure. And she's talking to him, and he's calling her ma'am. She's like, "Don't call me ma'am." And just keeps calling her ma'am. And then you've got the third guy. I can't remember the guy's names. Wyatt. Wyatt's the military guy. I want to say Cooper? Maybe? I can't remember now. But he works for the company, so he knows about the time travel stuff. He's kind of the electronics guy. And on top of that, he's black, so you get to make a lot of race jokes back in the past. I fully expect that we're going to continue to get jokes like that. Like they're in the 30s, and he's just like goes inside the bar with them, and everybody's staring at him. He's just like, if I go outside and wait, will I be safe? She's like, yeah, you should. And then he goes into the prison and they ask him to make a distraction, and so he starts talking to the guard, and the guard talks down to him because of his, because he's black, and then he's just like, "Oh yeah, I hope you live a long life. I hope you live to see Jordan and Michael Jackson, pretty much anybody named Michael." And then Barack Obama, the future is completely against you, sir. That whole spiel was just really funny. I hope it doesn't get overplayed though, to where that's the only reason he's on the show, is like, oh look, it's a black guy back in those times having to deal with the racial stereotypes back then. Isn't it funny? I don't want to have to deal with all of that the entire season. If they make a few jokes here and there, sure, that'll be funny. But if you overplay it, then it's going to get too much. Then I'm not going to like the jokes as much. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, he's a funny enough character. And on top of that, it seems like he's doing something for the main guy who owns the company for the time machine. I'm not sure what mission he's got him going on or what he's having him doing, but he had a recording of Lucy and Wyatt. So maybe they'll explain more about that soon. If not, maybe we'll just have to suspect that he's doing something evil until we find out, oh no, it's all for the good of something. I don't know. It's I don't want to judge too soon, but it seems like some of these storylines I've seen before. You've got the possible backstabber who turns out to just be, he's lying for a good reason. You've got the two characters that hate each other. They're going to like each other by the end of the season. And then the villain who, from what he says and some of the dialogue that he has with Lucy, he seems like an interesting enough villain, but we didn't get enough of him in this episode for my liking. But you can tell that he's got sort of an agenda that is not 100% evil in his mind, and he's going to try to convince Lucy that his idea is not 100% evil, and so that's going to be a thing throughout the season. But overall, the characters are interesting enough. The story I really do like, because once again, when it comes to time travel, there's a lot you can do with it. Some of it's done well, some of it's not. In this case, it's done fairly well, and I love they did this in Legends of Tomorrow as well. I love the idea of somebody goes back in time to change something just for nothing to change at all. Obviously, stuff changed in Lucy's life, but they go back in time, they try to, the guy stops the Hindenburg from crashing, which saves Kate's life. By the end of the episode, the Hindenburg still crashed, Kate still died at the scene of the crash. It's like, even though they tried to change stuff, nothing changed. Pretty much history stayed the same. And so it's kind of like this idea of fate. Like, even though you try to change major stuff, there's some things that are just written and are going to stay the same because of fate. And in Legends of Tomorrow, there was actually a better explanation for that, but I feel like there are no people watching the timeline from outside in this show. If there is, that would just completely take a turn that I do not see the show taking. So in this show, fate would have to be the explanation for all of this, which can explain away some things and other things not really. It would be pretty coincidental. But I like the idea that the history is set, and even if you go back in time to try to change it, it will still try to rewrite itself the same. It's going to try to work against the change. That being said, however, like I said, there were some changes in the future, and one of them we did see in the previews. Lucy gets back and her mother's completely fine after struggling with sickness. What we didn't see was she gets back, she has no more sister, and she's engaged. The engaged part was just kind of like, oh, she's engaged now to somebody. I don't feel like that's that important. The sister thing, though, when her mom said, I can't remember exactly what she said, but when she was calling for Amy, and her mother Amy, she didn't even say who's Amy, but she's like, what are you talking about, Amy? And I'm just like, does that mean she's gone, or is she just not here? Are they really going to make her be gone? And then, sure enough, she's... Where's Amy? Who are you talking about? Who's this Amy you keep talking about? It's like, she has no more sister. I really, really hope they explain this, because that's kind of got me intrigued now. First of all, just the fact that her mother is okay now, out of nowhere. The fact that she's engaged now, out of nowhere. And now her sister no longer exists. All from whatever happened at the site of the Hindenburg crash. I cannot wait to see how they explain this. It's got to be where one of their ancestors died on the crash, and so like they ended up the one that didn't die, like it was a wife and a husband, and like the wife died, so the husband remarried to another woman, and then that changed the outcome of their offspring, and now all of a sudden they grew up to be a different person completely. Something along those lines. I want to see how all of that happens. Because it would be easy enough to just say, "Oh yeah, Hindenburg crashed, stuff changed." That's all you need to know. Stuff changed. It's like, but no, I want it to be explained. I want it to be, okay, this is what changed whenever the Hindenburg did not crash. This person survived, which changed this, which changed this, which changed this, and that's why you have no more sister, and also why you're engaged, and also why your mom's not sick. I want to see all of these explained. I don't know if they will. If not, I feel like the show will lose me a little bit. But at the same time, it's still an interesting enough story that I want to tune in to find out more. I want to tune in to find out what's going to happen next week. They already talk about, you've got Abraham Lincoln involved. They're talking about Nazis. They're talking about there's one other thing in the previews that I can't remember now. Crap. I can't remember what they were talking about, but these little interesting tidbits in history. I want to see if it's going to be like every week you go here, you stop whatever the bad guy's trying to do there, and what changed this time. She comes back, now all of a sudden her dad's still alive. Now all of a sudden Wyatt's wife is still alive. All these little changes that they can do throughout the season just to see if at the end of it all goes back to the way it was before they even started. Like, I don't know, there's so many interesting things you can do. Anytime time travel is involved, it's always interesting to see how they're going to work it, whether they're going to do a good or bad job. Most of the time it's a bad job, but hopefully this time they've got a good idea going. They don't slip up and make any major mistakes. But yeah, overall, it was a good opening episode. It was a good way to start off the series. I really think the advertising is done really well to get people interested in it and get me interested in it. So I'm looking forward to see what this season has. Hopefully you guys are too. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this episode. What did you like and dislike? What do you think they're going to do with this season? What do you think it all means? What is the meaning of not life? No more Amy. Talk to me about it in the comments. I love discussing stuff like this. This can be so much fun to discuss throughout the season. So leave a like and subscribe for future timeless reviews, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.